I'm Liam, a 25-year-old guy and the youngest kid in my family. I've got two older sisters, Sophie, who's 32, and Rachel, who's 30. We grew up in a household centered around a family-owned grocery store, a business that's been passed down through generations on my dad's side. It's more than just a store to us. It's a legacy. My parents, Dad at 61 and Mom at 59, are the ones running the show now. They've been the heads of the family business for as long as I can remember. Growing up, our grandparents were fantastic. They set up college trust funds for each of us. The plan was that when we turned 18, we'd each have $100,000 set aside to help pay for college so that we wouldn't have to worry about student loans. It was their way of making sure we'd all have a good start in life. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned for my sisters. Sophie and Rachel ended up spending through their trust funds pretty quickly. Sophie tried college but dropped out after 2 years. Rachel barely made it through her first semester. Instead, they both chose to live large, traveling, partying, and splurging on things they couldn't really afford. Before long, all that money was gone, and neither had a degree to show for it. Now, both of them are back home, single moms working part-time shifts at the family grocery store. Between them, they've got 3 kids, my nieces. They're cute, but a real handful. As for me, I didn't want to follow in their footsteps. While I love the family business, I always wanted to try something different. So I started working on my own early. During high school, I took a part-time job as a landscaper. Summers, weekends, and after school, I worked every chance I got. It was grueling, back-breaking work, but I stuck with it. And by the time I graduated, I'd saved up around $20,000. When I got into college on a partial scholarship, I felt like I was on my way to building something real for myself. I figured that between my savings and my trust fund, I'd be able to cover any additional costs and maybe even graduate debt-free. Just like my sisters did when they turned 18, I asked my parents if I could have control of my trust fund. I wanted to manage it myself and start planning for my future. It felt like a rite of passage, my turn to take responsibility for my education and finances. But instead of a straightforward yes, my parents said we needed to have a serious conversation first. When dinner rolled around that night, I knew something was up. My nieces were running around, making a ruckus like they usually did, but my parents looked tense. Once we sat down and the conversation shifted to my trust fund, I could see it coming. The bad news. They dropped a bombshell on me. "Liam," my mom began softly, "we need to ask you for a favor. Can you wait another couple of years before accessing your trust fund?" I remember staring at her, completely confused. "Why?" I asked. My dad sighed and leaned back in his chair. "Because most of it is gone." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They went on to explain that they'd used a huge portion of my trust fund, money that was supposed to be mine, to cover a string of emergencies. Healthcare bills for my nieces, Rachel's expensive DUI lawsuit, and other living expenses for Sophie's kids. Apparently, they'd been dipping into it for years without ever telling me. "How much is left?" I demanded, still reeling from the shock. There was a long pause. Finally, my mom spoke, almost whispering, "There's only about $5,000 left." My heart sank. $95,000. Gone. They had blown through 95% of the money that was meant for my education, my future, and didn't leave me with enough to cover a single semester. They tried to justify it, saying they had to think of the family and that it was for the good of everyone. But all I felt was anger. I'd worked my ass off to save up my own money, and now they were telling me that I had to pay for everyone else's mistakes. I remember standing up from the table, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You already made the decision without me. This isn't a favor. You took my future and spent it." I left the house that night, bags packed, and didn't look back. I moved into a tiny apartment, finished my degree using my scholarship and the money I'd saved up from landscaping, and managed to graduate without a single cent from the trust fund. It wasn't easy, but I did it. I had to. Over the next few years, I used what little savings I had left to start my own landscaping business. I built it from the ground up, slowly but steadily. Eventually, I hired a small crew, and now we're doing well. I employ 6 guys, and we're booked solid most weeks. But every time I thought about what my parents did, it was like a punch to the gut. A couple of years ago, I decided I needed closure. I had my lawyer send a formal request to audit the trust fund account. When the report came back, I nearly lost it. There wasn't even $5,000 left. There was only $3,456.13. My parents had lied to me yet again, Dot. After that, I cut off all contact. They've tried reaching out over the years, sending letters, gifts, even showing up at my office. But I returned everything unopened. I had nothing to say to them, now, there's a new chapter in my life. I'm getting married next month. My fiancée, Jess, is amazing, patient, supportive, and understanding. But she's been gently urging me to reach out to my family to see if we can repair things before the wedding. She thinks it's important for us to start our new life without holding on to old grudges. I know it's painful, she told me one night, but if you don't try, you'll never really be free of it. She's right, of course. But how do I forgive people who threw me under the bus for the sake of their own convenience? How do I let go of the betrayal of losing something that was supposed to be mine because they couldn't manage their own lives? Jess wants my family to be there on our big day. She thinks it would be the start of healing for all of us. Part of me wants to give in and try, if only to see if they can even begin to understand what they did to me. But another part of me can't help feeling like they'll just take advantage of me again. After everything, am I really supposed to just let it all go? I've been thinking a lot about what to do, but I'm torn. Maybe it's time to bury the hatchet. Or maybe some wounds just run too deep. I hadn't reached out to my family, but apparently that didn't stop them from trying to worm their way back in. One evening, out of the blue, I discovered that Jess had been secretly talking to my family behind my back. It was like a punch to the gut. She'd been messaging them on Facebook, trying to smooth things over, and it didn't end there. She'd actually met up with them at a restaurant about a month ago. I couldn't believe it. She hadn't said a word to me about any of this until one night after dinner when she finally came clean. "They were so emotional, Liam," she said softly, eyes pleading. "I just wanted to help fix things." I couldn't even process what she was saying. "You've been talking to them for a month?" I asked, my voice low, trying to control the anger bubbling up inside me. "Why would you keep this from me?" She looked down, guilt written all over her face. I was scared. I thought if I told you, you might call off the wedding. I wanted to wait until after we were married to say anything." That hit me like a brick. She'd been planning to hide it until after we got married? I felt betrayed, blindsided. How was I supposed to trust her after this? Jess kept apologizing, saying she didn't mean to hurt me, that she just wanted to give me back my family. "They miss you, Liam," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Your mom even cried when we talked about the wedding. She begged me to help mend things between you guys." My head was spinning. I couldn't believe she'd gone behind my back, all because my mom played the guilt card. For the first time, I wondered if marrying Jess was really the right decision. She'd seen how much my family had hurt me, how deep those scars went, and yet she still thought she could somehow fix it all by sneaking around. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to storm out, but I stayed. I let her explain everything, how my mom had been messaging her nonstop, begging for updates, saying how much she missed me, how they wanted to see me happy and didn't want to be left out of such an important moment in my life. Jess had fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. They said they'd just want to talk, she finished, reaching out to grab my hand. "Please, Liam, give them a chance, even if it's just one conversation." I stared at her, heart pounding. A chance? After what they did to me? I'd built a wall around myself to keep them out, and she'd just opened the door for them to waltz right back in. "I need time to think," I finally said, pulling my hand away. "I need to figure out what to do." Jess nodded, eyes brimming with tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I didn't answer. I just got up and left the room, needing space to clear my head. Over the next few days, I tried to come to terms with what Jess had done. I kept running over everything in my mind, my fiancé sneaking around behind my back, my family trying to weasel their way into my life again. It felt like I was trapped in some sick version of my past, all the pain and betrayal rushing back at me in waves. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse. My sister Rachel showed up at my business, completely unannounced, dragging her 2 little girls along with her. I was in the middle of a meeting when one of my employees popped his head in and said, "Hey, there's a lady here with kids asking for you. Says she's your sister?" I froze. "Rachel? Here?" What the hell was she doing? I went out front, and there she was, standing awkwardly by the reception desk, her kids hanging onto her legs. The moment she saw me, she forced a smile. "Liam?" "Hey," she said, shifting nervously. "What are you doing here?" I asked bluntly. I was too shocked to even hide my irritation. She looked taken aback. I just wanted to talk. We haven't spoken in years. I thought maybe we could start over." I felt the anger flare up again, but I bit it back. "And you thought showing up at my job was the best way to do that?" Rachel swallowed hard, glancing down at her daughters. I didn't know how else to reach you." We stood there in tense silence for a moment. Her kids looked up at me with wide eyes, and I felt a pang of guilt. It wasn't their fault their mother made a mess of things. "Fine," I said finally. "Let's talk." We went outside, and Rachel took a deep breath. "Liam, I'm sorry. For everything. We all are. I know we can't undo what happened, but we want to make things right." I crossed my arms, staring at her. "Make things right? How? You can't give me back what you took." She looked like she might cry. "I know, but we want to be a family again. We miss you, Liam. The girls ask about you all the time." Her daughter stared up at me, and I felt a flicker of something. Sadness, maybe. But I couldn't let it distract me. Not now. "Mom's the one who drained the trust fund," Rachel continued quietly. "Dad didn't know until it was too late. When he found out, he wanted to come clean, but she begged him to keep quiet. She thought if we made it seem like they both decided to use the money, you might forgive them." I felt my stomach twist. "So you're saying Dad's been covering for her this whole time?" Rachel nodded, eyes wide and sincere. "Yeah. He's miserable, Liam. He misses you too. It's tearing him apart. I didn't know what to say. My dad had lied to me, covered for my mom, and let me think they were both responsible for losing my future. But hearing that he hadn't wanted to, it made things more complicated." "Why now?" I asked, my voice tight. "Why are you telling me this now?" Rachel glanced away. "Because Dad said he can't keep doing this. It's breaking their marriage, and he thinks Mom needs to fix it or he's going to leave." I blinked, taken aback. Leave? My dad had always seemed so steady, so dedicated. The idea of him walking away was surreal. "Please," Rachel whispered, "come home, talk to him, talk to Mom. Maybe we can fix this." I felt my resolve waver just for a second. But then I thought about all the years I'd struggled alone, all the times I'd reached out and been ignored, all the lies they'd told. Could I really just let that go? "Rachel," I said slowly, "I don't hate you, or Sophie, or the girls, but I can't just pretend everything's fine. It's not going to be that easy." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I know it's going to take time, but can we at least try?" I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. "We'll see. I need time to think." I could see the hope light up in her eyes. "Thank you, Liam. That's all I'm asking." When they finally left, I felt drained. I sat in my office for a long time, staring blankly at my desk, trying to sort through everything. My family was falling apart. They wanted me back. But could I really forgive them after everything they'd put me through? In the days that followed Rachel's unexpected visit, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. I was still processing everything she'd told me, and it felt like I was walking a tightrope between my desire to forgive my family and my instinct to protect myself from further hurt. Jess noticed I was distant, and when she pressed me for details, I shared what happened with Rachel. "They want to reconnect, Jess," I told her, frustration evident in my voice. "They think everything can just go back to normal, but how can it? They stole my future." Jess listened patiently, her brow furrowed in concern. "What if they really want to make amends? Maybe this is their chance to show you they've changed." "Changed?" I scoffed, running a hand through my hair. "They're the same people who spent my trust fund without a second thought. It's hard to believe they've suddenly grown a conscience." Still, Jess remained hopeful. "You've built a life for yourself, Liam. You're doing well. But holding on to all this anger, are you sure it won't just weigh you down?" I wanted to believe her, I really did. But the thought of facing my family again after all they had done made my stomach churn. I had fought tooth and nail to create a future for myself, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they would only drag me back into their mess. Despite my doubts, I agreed to meet with my dad. I figured if there was a chance for closure, I should at least hear him out. When I arrived at the diner, our family's old hangout, I could see he was nervous, fiddling with his hands as he sat at a booth in the back corner. His eyes looked worn and heavy, like he hadn't slept well in days. "Hey, Dad," I said cautiously as I slid into the seat across from him. "Liam," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm glad you came." We stared at each other for a moment, and I could feel the weight of everything hanging between us. Finally, he broke the silence. "I've missed you, son," he said quietly. "I've missed all of you. I know things have been rough, but I want to try to fix it. I need you to understand that I didn't know your mother was draining the trust fund until it was too late." I crossed my arms, still skeptical. "You let her manipulate you into covering for her, Dad. How could you do that? You should have come to me." "I was scared," he admitted, looking down at the table. "I didn't want to lose you. I thought if we could keep it under wraps, you wouldn't hate us. But I see now that it only made things worse." I took a deep breath, trying to digest his words. "You think I can just forgive and forget? You and Mom put me in a terrible position. You took my future from me." "I know. I can't change the past, Liam. But I can try to make things right moving forward. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild our relationship. I need you in my life." The sincerity in his voice tugged at something inside me. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to let go of the anger that had festered for so long. But I still felt the sting of betrayal. "Dad, it's not just about you and Mom," I said. "Sophie and Rachel both blew through their trust funds too. They didn't care about what that money meant. I don't want to be dragged back into their chaos." "I know," he replied, looking pained. "They're trying to change too. We're all trying to be better, but I can't do this without you. You're a part of this family, and I need you to give us another chance." We sat in silence for a moment, and I could see how desperately he wanted to make amends. It was hard to resist the urge to soften my heart, but I didn't want to get hurt again. "I'll think about it," I finally said, pushing my plate aside. "But it's going to take time." "I understand," he said, his voice a mixture of relief and gratitude. "I'll be here whenever you're ready." As I left the diner, I felt conflicted. The conversation had stirred up emotions I thought I'd buried deep. My dad wasn't the monster I'd painted him to be. He was just a man who had made mistakes, just like everyone else. But I still didn't know if I could trust him or my mom ever again. That night, I found myself tossing and turning in bed, struggling to find peace. Jess reached over and squeezed my hand. "What's on your mind?" she asked gently. I sighed, rubbing my eyes. "Just everything. I talked to my dad today. He wants to fix things, but can I really forgive them?" Jess propped herself up on her elbow, concern etched across her face. "You have to do what feels right for you, but don't let their mistakes rob you of your happiness. You've built an amazing life, and you deserve to enjoy it without their baggage." Her words lingered in my mind as I fell asleep, but the doubts kept creeping back in. Could I really forgive my family? Was there a path forward that didn't involve carrying their mistakes with me? The next day, Jess and I had plans to visit a wedding venue. It was a beautiful place, lush gardens, a charming barn, and a lake that sparkled in the sunlight. I'd been looking forward to it, hoping it would take my mind off everything. But as we walked around, I couldn't shake the heaviness in my heart. "I love this place," Jess said, smiling as she looked around. "It feels perfect for us." "Yeah, it is," I replied, forcing a smile. "It's beautiful." As we toured the grounds, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. This was supposed to be a joyful time in my life, yet I was haunted by my past. Would I really be able to move forward into this new chapter while still feeling weighed down by old wounds? Later that night, I received a message from Rachel asking if I would meet her again, this time with Sophie. They wanted to discuss our family and how we could work towards healing. I felt my stomach drop at the thought of facing them again. "I don't know if I can do this," I admitted to Jess as we lay in bed. "What if it just brings up more pain? Or maybe it could lead to closure," she suggested softly. "You can't know unless you try." I closed my eyes, contemplating her words. Maybe it was time to confront the past, to see if we could rebuild the relationship we once had. If I really wanted to move forward in my life, I had to let go of the anger and hurt. Taking a deep breath, I replied, "All right, I'll meet them, but it's going to be on my terms. Just remember, you're not alone in this," Jess reassured me, squeezing my hand. "I'm here for you." As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward healing, both for me and my family. It was time to face the music and see if we could find a way to mend what had been broken. The next day, I met with Rachel and Sophie at a small cafe in town. My heart raced as I walked in, uncertain of what to expect. Would this be a confrontation, or could it lead to something more constructive? I took a deep breath, pushing open the door and scanning the room until I spotted them seated at a table near the back. Rachel looked anxious, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the tablecloth. Sophie was more composed, but still had an air of nervousness about her. As I approached, I could feel all three of us tense up. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Liam!" Rachel exclaimed, a hint of relief washing over her face. "Thanks for coming." "Yeah, I'm here," I replied, sliding into the chair across from them. "Let's get to it." They exchanged glances, clearly unsure of how to start. Sophie cleared her throat, her eyes darting to mine. "We've missed you, Liam. A lot." I crossed my arms, bracing myself for what was coming. "Missing me doesn't change what happened. You two drained my trust fund. I need to know why." Rachel took a deep breath, and for a moment, I thought she might crumble. "We were reckless, Liam. We had our dreams, but we didn't think about the consequences. We thought the money would last forever, and then life hit us hard," I scoffed. "Life hit you hard? What about me? I lost my future because of your choices." Sophie leaned in, her voice trembling. "We're sorry. We never meant to hurt you. We were young and naive, and we wish we could take it back. But we can't." "Sorry isn't enough," I replied, my frustration bubbling to the surface. "You both had a chance to do something with that money, but you blew it. Now I'm left to deal with the aftermath. You can't just expect me to forgive and forget." Rachel nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "We know we can't undo what we did, but we want to make amends. We want you back in our lives, Liam. It's been painful not having you around." I softened for a moment, glancing at my sisters. They looked genuinely remorseful. "You have no idea how hard it's been for me," I confessed. "I built my life from the ground up, and it's been lonely without you. But every time I think of you two, I remember how you spent my future." Sophie reached across the table, her hand trembling as she placed it over mine. "We've been trying to figure out how to make it right. We want to help you, Liam. We want to support your business. We're not asking for forgiveness yet. We just want a chance to show you we've changed." I pulled my hand away, my resolve hardening. "How can I trust you again? How do I know this isn't just another empty promise?" Rachel leaned back in her chair, her expression pained. "You'll have to give us a chance to prove it. Maybe we could start with something small, like helping you out with your landscaping business." I raised an eyebrow, surprised by the suggestion. "You want to work with me, after everything?" Sophie nodded. "Yes, we want to help you grow it. We're willing to do whatever it takes to make things right between us. It's not about the money, it's about rebuilding our relationship." I considered their offer. It was a leap of faith, but perhaps it was worth exploring. "Okay," I said slowly, "but it's going to take time. I can't just forget everything that happened. I need to see real effort." Rachel smiled, hope brightening her features. "We'll do whatever it takes, I promise." As the conversation continued, I felt the weight of the past begin to lift, just a little. We talked about the business and what roles they could play. I still had my reservations, but at least we were making progress. By the end of the meeting, I felt a flicker of optimism I hadn't felt in years. When I got home, Jess was waiting for me. "How did it go?" she asked, her eyes shining with curiosity. "It was intense," I admitted. "They're genuinely sorry. They want to help with the business, and I'm considering it." Jess's expression shifted from concern to excitement. "That's great, Liam. Maybe this is the chance for healing you've been looking for." I nodded, still processing everything. "Yeah, but it's going to take time. I have to be careful. I don't want to get hurt again." "I understand," she said, wrapping her arms around me. "Just take it one step at a time. I'm here for you, no matter what." Over the next few weeks, I began to let my sisters into my life again. It wasn't easy, but I found myself slowly warming up to the idea of rebuilding our relationship. We met regularly, discussing the landscaping business and brainstorming ideas. They both showed genuine interest in helping, and it felt good to have them by my side, even if I was still holding back a little. As my wedding approached, Jess continued to encourage me to reconcile fully with my family. She believed it was essential for us to start our new life together without any lingering bitterness. It made sense, but I was still apprehensive. I was on guard, ready to protect myself if they tried to pull another fast one. When the day finally arrived, the venue was breathtaking. I couldn't help but smile as I watched Jess walk down the aisle, her face glowing with happiness. Everything felt perfect, but as I looked out at the crowd, I saw Rachel and Sophie sitting in the front row, beaming with pride. After the ceremony, I made my way over to them, taking a moment to breathe. "Thank you for being here," I said, genuinely meaning it. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Rachel replied, her voice filled with emotion. As we exchanged hugs, I felt a wave of warmth wash over me. Maybe this was the fresh start we all needed. We spent the evening laughing, reminiscing, and enjoying the celebration. It felt surreal to have them back in my life. But I still had my guard up. Later that night, after the guests had left and Jess and I settled into our hotel room, I took a moment to reflect. I'd taken a huge step today, one I wasn't sure I was ready for. But maybe that was part of life. Sometimes you had to take risks to find healing. I turned to Jess, who was sitting on the bed, and said, "Thank you for everything, for believing in me and encouraging me to reconnect with my family." She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "You did it, Liam. You faced your past and came out stronger. I'm so proud of you." As I settled into bed beside her, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was finally ready to face it, armed with the love and support of Jess and the hope of rebuilding my family. For the first time in years, I felt like I could truly move forward.